and I'm with planning. We also have Anita McKay here with planning as well as I believe Councilmember Gamble is here too. Okay.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Council Member. So for the agenda for the meeting, we're going to go into a little bit of background, talk about policy and zoning, and go into the requested land use policy, and then go into Q&A. But first, we want to talk about how to use WebEx because it can be a little bit confusing. It's not Zoom. I apologize. So just so you know, here's a little Q&A. We will be taking questions when we finished our presentation. If you would like to speak, there's this little handy like raise hand icon. Feel free to do that. We'll put you on our list, and then eventually we will hopefully get to your comments. If you'd also like to just plug in a question to the Q&A, you can either enter that in the chat. And again, it looks different on different screens, so my apologies. But you can either plug that into the chat or there's the 3 little dots right here. Nemo, sorry, my dog. There's the 3 little dots right here. And you can, it should direct you to the Q&A. Okay. All right, so we will go ahead and get started. Q&A would look like this. So again, feel free to plug any questions in there while I'm presenting, and we're going to try to get to them after we've concluded the presentation. All right, so why are we meeting? So Councilmember Gamble has requested that the Planning Department study a policy change between I-24 and Lifton Pike, which is off of Old Hickory Boulevard. It's Lifton Pike over here, I-24, as well as Whites Creek High School. And this is just our initial discussion to study this area. And we're talking about whether this change should be made from T2 rural agriculture to T2 rural neighborhood center. Give me 1 second. I've got a whining dog. I'm going to let him out. All right. So we're now going to go into the presentation on this policy change. So where exactly is the study area, just so we can get reacquainted. Again, we have Whites Creek High School right over here, as well as I-24, and then Old Hickory Boulevard. So it's kind of right off the highway and in between that Old Hickory I-24 interchange, in between that and Whites Creek High School. There are a couple existing businesses over here. They're mostly motor coach businesses, just so you all are aware. And the current policy is T4 rural agriculture, and we're discussing whether to study that to change to T4 rural neighborhood center. Okay, so just some background. We have 14 community plans in Nashville, and that's part of NashvilleNext. And community plans guide decision-making for the future built and natural environments. This plan amendment and this plan area study is found in the Bordeaux Whites Creek Haines Trinity Community Plan. So right about here, don't quote me on that, it's not exact, but we're found in that study area. And a critical component of this is the transect model. So the transect is a tool for categorizing, understanding, and guiding the various development patterns of the region from the most kind of natural area, our more open space area like Bells Bend or Beeman Park, to the most intense, which is P6, our downtown area. And tonight we'll be talking about policies that fall under our T2 rural transect. Okay, so this is a policy map. So currently in black is the outlined area that we're studying, and the current policy is T2 rural agriculture. It borders to the east, T2 neighborhood center, a little farther down, suburban community center is that orange. And then to the west, we have Whites Creek Park and Whites Creek High School over here, as well as some additional rural agriculture up here. Kind of the camouflagey green is conservation policy. Okay, so now that we've introduced the policy area, let's talk about what this policy means. So currently, the existing policy is rural agriculture, and that means active agricultural activities with limited associated residential uses. So predominantly focusing on agriculture, that's currently what's allowed. What's recommended for zoning within the current policy is agricultural zoning, which looks for a kind of a minimum lot size of 5 acres or one house or one building per 5 acres. So very remote with very limited development. The proposed policy is rural neighborhood center. So that still falls under the T2 transect, but it allows for some different types of uses, including commercial, office, mixed use, residential, and institutional. And these rural neighborhood center is really intended to offer some of those really important neighborhood services for rural areas while keeping within the character of a rural community. So this would essentially open up the area to allow for some limited mixed use beyond just the really limited policy that's applied currently. Okay, so tonight we've been talking about policy. And just so we can go into a little refresher, what's policy versus zoning? It can get pretty confusing. So just to give a little helpful diagram here. So tonight we've been talking about land use policy and the transects. And what we're talking about is rural agriculture to rural neighborhood center. Those are policies. And what policies do is they guide the vision for an area. And they also make recommendations for potential zoning choices. And then zoning is the law, and that is really what controls the physical development of land. We like to call it kind of the genetic code of land. So that's the density, height, setbacks, parking access, etc. And tonight we're just talking about policy that could guide zoning if it goes through. And again, there is no development necessarily associated with this policy change. There's not an associated rezoning at this time. So we're simply talking about kind of changing the intent of the area from simply rural agriculture to allowing for more mix of uses through rural neighborhood center. All right. So now we're going to open up into Q&A. Let me stop sharing. Actually, first, I was hoping, Councilmember, was there anything that you wanted to add before we go into Q&A?
Thank you very much for your presentation and the detail about the difference from what the current policy is and what the proposed change is. And I'll just say that this request to review this area came out of discussions that I've had with community members at various meetings and also one-on-one, talking about how we would like to see the area grow or change as we move forward. As we all know, there's been a lot of growth in the city since the initial plan was developed in 2015, and many people in the area feel that we need services, as you mentioned, suburban services, restaurants, retail, and things like this. So this policy change would allow that type of neighborhood centered development that I'm hearing that we need in this area, and that I agree. I live not far from this area and have lived over here for over 30 years. So I too understand and believe that we do need more services for our area. And so that's how this policy changed. That was the impetus for asking for a review of this area and consideration of a policy change.
Thank you, Councilmember. I appreciate that. We are going to go into Q&A now. Anita, help me out here. I'm not seeing any raised hands yet. Just to remind everyone, I know WebEx can be a little confusing. So there's this little like palm icon like this. Should be on the right of the screen. And if you would like to speak, please just press that icon and we will add you to our list. And also feel free to either plug in a question in the chat or within the Q&A. Okay, I think we have a hand raised. Mr. Ewing, and Kevin, could you unmute Mr. Ewing?
I think I'm unmuted. Oh, okay. So can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Councilwoman Gamble. I don't necessarily have so much question. I mean, maybe I do. I think that it is hard for the community to respond to a plan amendment change to rural neighborhood center. This is a large stretch. It's over half a mile along Old Acre Boulevard. And a rural neighborhood center is generally applied to intersections and to small areas. This is really large. The transition at the interstate at I-24 and Old Acre Boulevard exists going, from some CS zoning and SP under T3 Community Center down to T2 Rural Neighborhood Center already, and then to rural agriculture, which was what the community expressed its desires for. I do not hear from people that I know in the community their expression for this to be developed into suburban services, as the councilwoman said. I feel like there is a good stretch of neighborhood center, even T3, neighborhood evolving, Old Acre Boulevard, Brick Church Pike area. It's available for development. There are areas of T3CC at the off-ramp right there at Old Acre Boulevard that have been set for sale for years. I feel like this is too large of a piece for rural neighborhood center. It's not small. It's not at an intersection. There's not an accompanying project. The park, Whites Creek High School, are adjacent. The sensitive stormwater watershed of Little Creek is adjacent. And I feel like the overwhelming expression of the community was that the heart of Whites Creek, and as you get closer to the historic district, as you leave the interstate intersection, is to remain rural. So I sympathize that maybe there aren't a lot of hands jumping up with Q&A, but it is hard to respond to a policy change without an accompanying proposal. And then the last thing I'll say is that some of us in here have been involved with a rural neighborhood center plan amendment and then SP proposal at Whites Creek Pike and West Green Lane. And what is illustrated in Nashville Next as far as rural neighborhood center with photos of Loveless Cafe and the Whites Creek Historic Bank building. The applicant at West Green Lane has been pushing for 325 apartments in 3-story buildings. So there's some discrepancy on how rural neighborhood center is going to be expressed, and that these areas are experiencing pressure, requests for people for them to become things to serve people that are not immediately in the area for other areas or for other desires. So as someone who lives just north of the intersection Old Acre Boulevard on Whites Creek Pike, I don't support this large of a move to rural neighborhood center. Thank you.
Hey, thank you for your comments. And we're going to move on to our next. I believe someone has their hand raised. Okay. Cecil, and I'm sorry if it's Cecil. My apologies, Cheryl.
It's Cecil. Can you hear me?
Cecil, yes, we can hear
Yeah,
you. Go
I'm
ahead.
gonna go by Buddy. So let's use Buddy instead.
All right, buddy, you got it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate you having us all tonight to review this request. This sort of comes as a shock to me. If you look at the area, my 3 tracks are approximately half of this. I have no knowledge of really why we want to do this. I've never been approached or by any developer wanting to develop this property, and I'm here to learn. And if there are intentions, if there are plans on the table, I sure would like to know about it. And I'm here to learn and see what everybody has to say. I understand the growth that we need to have in Nashville. We are growing, and we got to have land to grow and build on. And I'm all for that, but also am for, not getting the cart before the horse. And if there are no developments being planned, and I certainly have none, I'd like to say let's discuss this thoroughly. If this is really something we need now, it looks like to me, based on the topography and being a resident of this property for 65 years, you are limited to strip development because you do have a major gas line running just north of the southern boundary on this thing, which is going to limit you to a strip type development. And also to the north, you have a hill that's going to limit you to a strip type development if you proceed with this type of mixed use development. But again, I'm here to learn and see what we can do and how we can move forward if we need to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Buddy. All right, I just want to clarify a couple things before we go on to the other hands raised that we have. So for policy changes, we do policy changes without a developer request or without a zoning request. We do that often. So these are not, just to clarify, this is not some sort of exceptional case. When we redid Nashville Next over 7 years ago, that was applying policy before necessarily there was a development or a specific plan in the pipeline. So it is a normal part of the process that we like to engage in, especially as our community continues to evolve, so that it's ready and primed for change if change comes, and is primed for change that is appropriate to the community. So just want to clarify that point. All right, we will move into, it's Lisa has her hand raised.
Hello, can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Okay, good, thank you. Thank you for conducting this meeting, and thank you, Ms. Gamble, for presenting this and having it presented to us here in the community. I'm Lisa Proctor, and I live at Dry Fork Road over here in Whites Creek. And first, I had a question, and I don't know if you can just answer this off the bat. How many acres are is in that red outlined area? And how much of that acreage is steep slope? And how much of that acreage is in floodplain?
I don't have the floodplain and steep slope numbers off the top of my head, but it's roughly about 84 acres. And I will say we are very open to having a discussion tonight if we can, change the study boundaries to be closer and farther away from steep slopes. So that's definitely a conversation we want to be having as we continue to discuss the study area. So thank you for your question.
And I did have another statement I just wanted to make. Am I still on? Oh, okay,
Yes.
thanks. Thank you. If it's about a half a mile stretch, and if I believe there's quite a bit of floodplain and probably problem soils and that, then I think what we're looking at is changing the rural agricultural area. And I know there's some NC already in there. I just wanted to go on record and say that I'm opposed to that. I think we're putting the cart before the horse at this point. I think I do understand why policy, or excuse me, why council persons want to go in and and maybe change areas in the hopes or looking to the future, of desires of community members and businesses and developers. But right, we have discussed some of this area in the past with a developer that wanted to put in trucking. And I understand that Ms. Gamble has said that there would be no trucking in the future there, or trucking use, or that type of thing. What I'm trying to get at is I just feel like this is just too soon. We're already right now in the middle of a T2 NC debate, if you will, at another major corridor coming into Whites Creek. And then now this is one coming in from the other major corridor from Old Hickory Boulevard. And I think we're all kind of, not me, I'm not going to say we, I'm going to say I'm feeling that we're getting squeezed for neighborhood center at this point, that I think I think that a lot of my friends and neighbors and community aren't necessarily that interested in having. So I just wanted to say that I would like to see it stay as is, and I'm opposed to having an RNC there at that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I just want to also mention one more thing too. We do believe that it is of our opinion that because it's next to and close to a major interstate and is along a major arterial boulevard, that it might be, an exceptional case for T2NC just because of its location. So I want to make sure to get that out there. And then I see Ben's hand. I think it's been raised for a while. So Ben, please join us.
Did you say Ben?
Yes, Ben. Ben
Hey.
Jumper.
Yeah, this is Ben Jumper.
Okay.
Thanks for having me here today. Ms. Gamble, thanks for organizing this and making it happen. I'm a 10-year resident of Whites Creek. I've been working in Nashville since 1975, I guess. We have 300-acre farm here on Licton Pike, and we just purchased property a weekend before last at the Fontenelle auction. And we are all about Whites Creek being a wonderful rural community, and we're very happy to be here. But I agree with the gentleman that owns the land. I would like to hear more details. I see his property and maybe one other parcel blocked out in red there. And I would definitely like to hear more details. And I would definitely like to hear more from the community. So my response to this would be to hold off and let's have some community meetings to really get a good read on where everybody is. Because I've just come into this, and now that we're substantial landowners in Whites Creek, I want to be a good steward of the land and our community. So I would like to see our community get together and have some further discussion on this and make sure everybody fully understands, especially the owner of the land needs to be totally aware of what's going on. And that's my comment.
Great, thank you, Ben. Okay, I think Ian has been waiting. Ian has their hand raised. Ian, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thanks. My name is Ian Rett, and when I first moved to Nashville in 2009 and was looking for places to live, it was really clear that all the development was really being contained inside of Briley, and everything outside of Briley was meant to be preserved. And then that got codified in the NashvilleNext long-range plan, which is supposed to be 25 years, in scope. And it just occurs to me that this project is along with the Green Lane project and the one that was formerly proposed here over on Cato Road as well are all, significant reinterpretations of the Nashville Next plan. And it just occurs to me that we're kind of making these incremental decisions that cumulatively have a fundamentally transformational effect on what is intended, according to the Nashville Next, to be preserved. So if we're really at the place at this crossroads as a community of deciding that we need to start putting apartments in forests and converting, meadows into parking lots for apartments, in order to bring, services and stuff like that, then I think that we really have to address the fact that Nashville Next is maybe no longer relevant at all, and start the process over and reimagine what Northrop Raleigh is going to look like. If that is to be the case, then we should just put a pause on all these conversations and come back and just like, okay, start, what do we want Northrop Raleigh to look like? It feels like in this case and also in the Green Lanes case, and I don't mean to conflate the two, but there's also seems to be this sort of like administrative fitting into like how to make this project fit into the landscape, into the land use, as opposed to does it match to the long range plan, which it kind of doesn't. So I just feel like there's this great sense of urgency about putting apartments and stuff. And I'll also note for the record that the census data shows that Davidson County is actually losing people, that we actually have an outflow of people leaving Davidson County because they're being priced out of alternative housing here and moving out to surrounding counties. So the sense that we have to go and build more inventory for people because we have a shortage is actually not correct. And I think that also needs to be kind of brought into consideration, especially when we're talking about changing course of our 25-year long plan that we outlined just 5 years ago. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it.
Hey, Olivia, this is Kevin. I'm going to unmute Helen Tarleton next now.
Okay.
And for everyone else who's already spoken, if you can click your raised hand again to lower your hand, that way we can tell anybody new that has their hands raised.
Thanks, Kevin.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes?
Mhm.
Great.
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. And thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate any opportunity to be, a representative of this community, because it's a very wonderful, I think we live in a pocket of the county where people still really care about each other and work to try to support each other in any way possible. I really appreciated what Mr. Jumper said. I live about 3 miles from him, and I think that we need more opportunities for people to weigh in, and there's a way in which we haven't had that recently that I think it's important to try to make sure that we have enough community representation at these meetings. I was here, like Mr. Jumper, I've been here for a long time. I was here 20 years ago and was here when the first planning process for Nashville Next happened, and we had a huge representation of people at Whites Creek High School sitting around tables trying to decide what we wanted for this community. And it was powerful to be in that room and to hear the desires for this to continue to be a rural area, agricultural area. So I'm invested in trying to keep that alive, and I appreciate any opportunity for that to continue. I don't see any outspoken reason other than the development folks for why that should change at this point, because I think most of the people who live in this community want it to remain rural and agricultural. So that's my 2 cents, and I appreciate the fact that you all made it possible for me to finally figure out a way to raise my hand because I was having a hard time. I'm used to Zoom, not used to this platform. So thank you for letting me weigh in. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And I do want to clarify a couple things. So again, this is still within the rural transect policy. We're not moving to suburban. The intention of the rural neighborhood center policy is to maybe offer some more services within rural character. And farms and anything that is there right now can certainly remain there. This is not meant to be a drastic overnight change. So I just want folks to be aware that we're still staying in the T2 transect, which I know is really important to Whites Creek folks, to many of them. So we're going to move to Angela next. I think she's had her hand raised for quite some time.
Okay, and then we can go, if you want to, we can go to George next. I have him on the list. He don't have his hand raised, but he mentioned to me in chat. So we can go to George next after Angela.
Sounds good.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Are
you.
you here? Okay, thank you. First of all, I wanted to just kind of make a note of how the meeting was advertised. There wasn't really a clear link put out there. It was embedded in a PDF file, and then when people, I know we have 5 neighbors who have texted me, said I can't get on, and they're elderly, and we had worked with them to try to get them on. So I think the meeting notice was a little tough. Several people have had trouble. So just to let you know going forward what might be helpful. Second, it was my understanding, I was one of the organizers to help get the crowd out for the Nashville Next process. And it was my understanding that the Nashville Next plan is the community's plan. And it emanates from the community. And so I think that we've worked very, very hard, and I'm a little discouraged that just 12 months ago we were having the same discussion. Hey, we need to have a community plan change. Hey, it just, I don't think it's a coincidence that it's, the little triangle that was honed out in the redistricting. And then I don't think it's a coincidence that it was the same area that was requested a plan change just, less than a year ago. And it to me, it kind of indicates who's driving the cart here. And I think the community has really been engaged in the whole process and works diligently with planning to make sure that we're being accountable for our community plan. And so I think for just kind of one, I'd like to know, when you say the study area, I'd like to know the method of the study. I think that would be super helpful for us to understand how you go about studying an area. And then two, I would like to ask for a show of hands or a vote from everyone here at this meeting as to what they think, if they're for it or they're against it. I think this is like some esoteric exercise, and I think it's just coming out of the blue, and I don't think it's emanating from the community. And I think that in order for this to be successful, and in order for Whites Creek to be successful, we've got to continue the community-based discussions. And so if that means opening up Nashville Next, we can get more of Whites Creek to turn out if you'd like. That's not a problem. We were the number 1 participants in Nashville Next. We have bought into your process 100%. So we'd like to work with you in every way possible for this to be 100% transparent. And we would like to totally protect our rural historic community. We are the crucible of history for the city of Nashville. We have antebellum homes, we have the Trail of Tears, we have archaeologically significant sites that have been written up in national magazines. We have a rich history of agriculture and dairy farming. We are the crucible of Nashville's history, which has pretty much been wiped off the map everywhere else in our town. And I think that you know, I was talking to one of Nashville's great historians, and he said every other city our size has a museum to preserve their history, and talks about Nashville's history. And Nashville doesn't have a museum that talks about Nashville's history. So we are doing all that's possible to be good neighbors, to be thoughtful, to be sustainable. And so, and we expect our community plan to be honored, and we expect to honor your process. So help us engage in your process so we can make sure that this is correct. And I appreciate this opportunity, and we'll work with you any way possible. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. I just want to offer a couple points of clarification, and then I think the council member turned her video on, so I'll let you respond as well. For the notice, we apologize if the link was confusing. We usually put directions on how to find it on our website, just because the link ends up being really long. So it can be difficult with online meetings. We do think, however, that they can open up to a greater discussion, and for folks that maybe can't get out or make it on time to be able to be here virtually. So we do tend to switch between virtual and in-person meetings, and we try to be accommodating. And we also included the phone number tonight on the notice, which folks can call into without needing internet access to listen. So just for that point, we're trying everything we can to make sure things are accessible. And I know it can be a little bit more difficult when things are online, but I think it also opens up the conversation to even more people. And we've seen greater attendance at our online meetings. And then as for our process, so this was requested by the council member, and what we have been doing is we do a detailed analysis based on different aspects of the policy, and we kind of go line by line through the policy and examining the area. And we also look at, let me share this slide with y'all and get a better idea of what I'm talking about. See if it'll come up. One second. Okay. So we use NashvilleNext's guidance. Sorry, this is for our past community plan. We use the major and collector street plan as well as Walk Bike Nashville. We look at access, street connections, transit facilities, roadway capacity, and then we look at the fabric of the neighborhood, surrounding land uses, and proximity to different places. And the surrounding population density to help us inform our analysis. And then we bring that to the community to have this kind of open discussion. And I want to be clear tonight that the lines that we've shown you are not necessarily cut and dry. This is an initial take on it. I know parts of it, as you can see, are pretty much clear cut or farmable land, and we do have parts that are steep slopes. So we can modify based on environmental and conservation features if necessary. And then I do want to say one note on NashvilleNext. We do update NashvilleNext periodically with amendments like these to account for changes in the whole county as well. Because when we look at changes within planning and policy, we like to think about the whole of Davidson County as well, and the particular community. But we have to keep everyone in mind, and certain areas have been asked a lot of, I will say, for accommodating development. And I would like to move into Councilmember Gamble. I know you seem to have, yeah, okay.
Yes, if you allow me just to make a brief comment, I just wanted to remind everyone that NashvilleNext was never intended to sit in perpetuity. It was always intended to be reviewed and evaluated and updated if needed, based on how the area and the community has evolved. But it's always been the process, a community-driven process, and this is no different. This is not coming out of the blue. If you recall, I introduced legislation last year that we look at updating areas of extreme growth. Nashville grew over 14% in this over the past 10 years. And it seemed with the census and the new decade, it seemed like a good time to look at areas, particularly areas of in the city or in the county that have had a lot of growth or change over the last 7 to 10 years. So this is not a trick. It's not anything that came out of the blue or anything that is being driven by developers. There is no proposed project for this property. Yes, there was a project that was proposed by a trucking company a year ago. Actually, it was 2 years that it was initially proposed, but it was not something that the community wanted. And so this is not a response to that particular development or any development. Is just in response to the need to look at how areas have changed. I do appreciate all of the work that many of you on this call participated in the initial development of the Whites Creek Bordeaux Community Plan. But I also think that we should be able to have discussions with new members or residents who weren't part of that discussion on the front hand and provide an opportunity for everyone to weigh in on this. This is not a done deal. This is the first community meeting that we're having about this. This is a great opportunity, and I appreciate all of you for giving your input and insight on this property and how you feel about making a change or how you feel a change would impact the community. That's the purpose, for us to get feedback from the community on this proposed change. It is not to suggest that this is what has to be, or as Olivia said, the boundaries are flexible. I mean, this is not a done deal. We're having this meeting today just for the purpose that has been suggested by many of you, to get feedback from the community about how this area has evolved and what it could change to be if that's what we want it to be. So thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. And again, I do want to emphasize the Council Member said we do regularly update Nashville Next. And as we have evolved drastically in the past 7 years, we try to accommodate that growth and change with the community in mind. So I think
Olivia,
yes,
Kevin, I got 2 more callers. One is George, and another one is Zach. That's a call-in user that you can't see. So I'll meet George
we'll go with
first.
George and then Zach, and then I think Marka has their hand raised. So, all right, perfect. All right. Go ahead with George.
Thank you all. Appreciate being unmuted again, and thank you, Councilwoman Gamble, and for the folks here engaged in the conversation. I do just want to reiterate some of how much I appreciated the comments from neighbors that had been involved in Nashville Next. The Whites Creek was delayed and held out, and how much work it was for that engagement and that involvement. And appreciate planning and having these conversations with community, but to the sense that residents engaged in this. I mean, we have a resident on the call who didn't even know his parcels were involved in this proposed plan amendment discussion. So, and then also going back to the comment about rural agricultural, I mean, the idea that that designation for this area by the community was that area was appropriate and identified and envisioned to remain primarily agricultural. And there can be differing opinions of the relevance and the longevity of Nashville Next, but the idea when we got together and sat down at the table and engaged with planning on this process, like another caller said, I mean, it's 20, 25-year, 40-year plan, and like another caller said, we are seeing that Davidson County is not growing in the way that we were in different ways. So the sense that this remains primarily agricultural does not mean no development. But I appreciate everybody's time on this. And then also, I think that we did get, there are callers that were trying to get in, I think asking to submit phone numbers to then submit to Kevin to get them to get recognized to speak. So thank y'all.
Thank you. I think, Kevin, you said Zach was next.
Yes, I'm gonna meet him now.
Can you guys hear me? Oh, maybe you can. I'm sorry. All right. I thank you again to Council Lady Gamble for pulling this together and for the planning department to hear our concerns. I have not heard a lot of people that are for this development. So the fact that it's a neighborhood pushed policy change doesn't really seem to add up as far as I'm concerned. Angela had mentioned that there was a study that was supposed to be done as a part of opening up Nashville Next to these community T2 neighborhood center areas. And the main reason why I think that's important is that T2NC has never been attempted before. So I think we want to make sure that we get it right so that we don't set a bad precedent for the rest of not just Whites Creek, but for other T2NC areas within the county. I've actually been around long enough on this process to remember pinch points, but apparently those are no longer in play because we've now gone all the way to Licton Pike with this T2NC. My comment is that the policy change seems to be rushed through in a very tactical manner, whereas I think that we look to planning to be a little bit more strategic about what T2NC would mean. You know, I know some people have mentioned the Green Lane development that was another T2NC project that we sort of had some agreement initially on. And then within the last week, planning has added T3 neighborhood evolving to the mix. And I feel like that unless we can have a study done on some of these properties, I just feel like it's going to be another Trojan horse that we're going to have to put up with when, as an agricultural area, we provide, really the reason why there's any clean air in Davidson County is because of us and because of our trees. So anyway, thank you for allowing me to comment, and I'll jump off. Thanks.
Kevin, I think Marka had their hand up.
Thank you so much. Speak out here. As a new person, 5 years, 6 years living here in White Creek, my perspective is this development would be a negative impact on the community as well as our agriculture and our wildlife. The reason we moved out here is because it's quiet and peaceful and the traffic wasn't as bad. And now we, this comes in, it's going to break all of that. Also, possibly growing. And I feel like we can all we support one another. What we have. Bringing this development would be a negative impact. So thank you so much, Martin.
I will say, Marka, I don't think we could hear you really well. I got, you were coming in and out. I think I got the crux of it. But if there's anything else, we were just having issues hearing you.
They can hear you.
No, they can hear you.
Take it off speaker.
Okay, let me see if we have any other hands raised. We still have some hands raised of folks that have spoken, but just to ensure that if you want to speak again, you can. We'll be here till 7:30. But if you mean to have your hand raised for a second time, my apologies. So I'm just going to go down that list unless, Kevin, has anyone else contacted you?
No, no one else at this time.
Okay. All right, let's go back to Buddy, Mr. Sherrill.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone's comments. I think there may be room to the east to do something similar like is being planned, but I don't know. I just think we're taking it too far to the west, especially on my properties. I don't see that as being a pro for me. I think there's more cons than there are pros here. But it is something that I think we need to look at in the future. Like I said, we do need to grow. There is room for growth, but now seems a little bit far stretched, in my opinion. But yeah, I've learned a lot tonight. So thank you. Appreciate it. That's all.
Thanks, Buddy. Angela, I think your hand is still raised, but just let me know if you would like to speak. Or, okay, Angela's hand is no longer raised. I think, okay, let's see. Ben, your hand is raised. Would you like to speak again?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to make myself clear. I am all about progress for our community, and I want to live in a rural community, and that's why we bought this farm. And as long as I'm alive, you'll never see tract homes or anything like that going on this 300 acres that I live on. And but I do think that our community needs a few things, and so I really want to address those in future meetings. I think we need without doing any advertising, I think we need a Trader Joe's or a Kroger or something out here. And I don't want to block that from happening for our community, because I don't think I'm just speaking for myself. And I don't want to assume to speak for anyone. I'm just giving my personal views here. I'm not against progress, and but I do want to keep the rural feel of our community. In anything we do out here, we just need to discuss and everybody fully understand it. And we're never going to make everybody happy, but we can try to bridge the gaps. And I'm a peacemaker, so that's what I would like to do. And going forward, and I would like to participate in more meetings in Whites Creek and Friends of Whites Creek. I've been dealing with health issues for the last 4.5, 5 years. So I haven't jumped in the community meetings and so forth. But
Then I think we lost you. Okay.
Cheryl, you
Okay.
have the most beautiful farm in Whites Creek. I pass it every day and I love it.
Thanks, Ben. We appreciate it. And okay, let's move on to Lisa. Lisa, you have your hand raised.
Hi. I think you answered my question in the Q&A about will we have more meetings? Because with only 22 participants tonight, that's no way to get a real feel for what all of Whites Creek wants, although I know what I want. But, I'm always open to hearing everyone else's opinions. And I do know that over time, if things do evolve in neighborhoods, but I've always looked at the NashvilleNext T2 rural application of policy out here as being something much longer range than just say 7 years or 8 years. There was an awful lot of work that went into that, and I think that the ones, including myself, that did work in the NashvilleNext process was really trying to create a vision for the future of our community, not a 5-year one or a 10-year one. And also I have another question. The T2 NC policy, I read through that document, and it seems like there needs to be some work done on defining that better. And I don't know, I would just like to point that out. It's got some things in it that are just quite vague, and I just felt like that this might be a good opportunity to say that I think the T2NC policy itself needs to be looked at. So then we would know exactly what we're talking about here. If it says that low-rise flats are allowed, how many? You know, there's no definition to really what even a low-rise flat is in a neighborhood center. And then one more point, and I'll let it, I'll go. In the T2 RNC, I believe that it does mention, probably at the very beginning of the description, is generally at a four-cornered intersection. So, when we look at Whites Creek, downtown Whites Creek is what we call it, where our bank and our post office is. That's the major intersection in Whites Creek. And I can see that as being what would be the downtown area or a neighborhood center, if you will. And it is a neighborhood center, I believe. But if you're going along Old Hickory Boulevard, past Lipton Pike, and you see farmland to the left and the right, past going towards I-24, what is that as far as an intersection? You can go all the way up to I-24, and then now you're intersecting with I-24. So the definition of T2RNC and how it applies to us here, those are the questions that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. We appreciate the feedback on the policy. I just want to offer a couple points of clarification from planning side. So with policy, I know policy can sometimes be vague. That's because zoning really gets into the nitty gritty, the number of units allowed and things like that. Zoning is definitely more about the intent and vision for an area, but I understand the frustration with lacking specificity. And then I will also add that as planners, we view this area where Licton and Old Hickory meet close to I-24 as an exceptional location because of its proximity to the highway and the high school. So I know that we typically, in the policy say, four corners of an intersection. The thought behind this was that it is an exceptional location given its proximity to the highway and to the rest of the county. So thank you for your comments. I think that we have we have Helen up, but I think that Tracy hasn't spoken yet, and they have their hand raised. Kevin, would you unmute Tracy? Thank you.
Hi, all. My name is Tracy Coates. We live on Shaw Road. My question to you is, after this meeting, what are next steps? What does the next step look like for our community? And how will you improve the communications to the other folks that we need to engage in the community? Are you going to do an in-person where we can perhaps drive older folks who have, lived here a lot of years to a local meeting? And, we don't need any more gas stations or Mexican restaurants at the interstate. So tell us what your plan is for that key intersection there. Thanks so much. I appreciate the opportunity to interact with all of my neighbors. Hi, neighbors, and you and Councilwoman Gamble as well. We appreciate it.
Hi, Tracy. I'm Anita McKeag with the Planning Department, and I'm weighing in on this one. I'm kind of overseeing the Nashville Next amendment process, the ones on the council resolution. So, all of them are a little bit different. And so in this case, we wanted to come early and hear from the community and see what thoughts are. If you all were like, hey, we understand, this change is okay, or we've got this concern or that concern, or we want the area shrunk by this. So in this case, I'm hearing a lot of concern. So I think we need to rethink, see what next steps would be. Do we want to keep working on this and shrink the area and then possibly work with the leadership to get more word out and then determine, more meetings, virtual, in person. You know, we're always weighing the comment too that people are just tired of so many meetings and going to meetings, you know, so we're always walking that fine line between, do we have too many meetings or do we have just enough? Do we hit that sweet spot with just enough? So in this case, you know, we certainly have a lot of contact information for the people who have joined us tonight, and we can let you know next steps once we, you know, talk about them and think about them a little bit more and see what needs to be done.
And just to add there, I know there's been some questions about the notification process. We do typically around 1,000-foot buffer of notifications, and we sent those notifications out 14 days in advance of the meeting, 13 days in advance of the meeting. So property owners should have been notified. My apologies if you didn't receive a notice and were within that area. I think it was really only like 15 or 16 people, since Whites Creek, the parcels are so huge out there. 1,000 feet doesn't get you too far. So all of the property owners should have been notified. Just to be clear, we did have a notification process. Okay, I think that, and let's see, did we go to Helen? Was Helen who we skipped, or Angela? Helen?
Sure, I'm happy to weigh in one more time anyway.
Okay.
I appreciate what you're saying about, you know, trying to meet the needs of, you know, providing more services within our community. And I can see why you somehow, you know, to some extent, it feels to me like arbitrarily decided that it was Licton Pike and the high school that would dictate that. But I know that between Licton Pike and I-24, there are some very significant, still, you know, there are definitely the, you know, the, I can't think of the name of it. It's not tractor trailer, but you know, there are the places right by 24 that service tour buses. But there are also some farms there. There's Gigi's Lavender Farm, and there's a cemetery up there that's certainly you know, 200 years. There are people in that cemetery that are 200 years, that have been there for 200 years. So there's significant farmland between I-24 and Licton Pike. And I think that's what some of us are concerned about preserving. And I don't think it's a given that should all of a sudden become neighborhood central or whatever the designation is. So, so you know, I mean, I think that's the piece of it that I wanted to say. That I think, you know, we said this when the last time this discussion happened. Somehow somebody talked about a pinch point at Licton Pike, and I'm not sure that that's accurate, except for conceptually for people who are thinking about development. So I just want to weigh in that those of us who live here don't see that as the pinch point. It seems to us that I-24 would be a more relevant pinch point. And I heard somebody else tonight say that east of 24 would make more sense for efforts for development to be in that direction. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Let me see if we have anyone else waiting to talk. I think we might.
I'm still seeing some hands raised, but I think everyone has already
Yeah,
spoken once or twice.
I think they have, yeah. And I want to emphasize again, y'all, that the study boundaries that we've shown tonight, and let me just pull those up. These can be changed and then can be more focused along Old Hickory. We just took the existing T2RA and T2 neighborhood center, but we could adjust this so that the development is concentrated just right there along Old Hickory. And just wanted to put it out there that this is the kind of the beginning point for the study boundaries, and it's been really helpful to hear everyone's feedback tonight. But these are not set in stone at all for this policy amendment. So just wanted to make that very clear. Okay. Anita, and am I missing anyone else?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Well, before we come to a close, and again, my email I put in the chat, but let me share it. It's on the notice. I would like to offer Councilmember Gamble a chance to speak one more time. If you have anything else you'd like to add, Councilmember, please go ahead.
Thank you, and I really do appreciate all of the attendance and the comments tonight. This is very helpful as we look at how we can accommodate services and growth in a smart way in this area. I appreciate the suggestions that this study area may be too big, too wide. I appreciate Mr. Sherrill and Mr. Jumper, who are landowners in this direct vicinity, for giving your comments regarding your land and how you see the future development of the area or not. So I really do appreciate all the comments and input that we received today. And that this is really how the process should work. I agree that we do need more people, and I look forward to a second meeting, being more involved in the planning of that meeting and getting more participation from our neighbors and residents.
All right. Well,
Olivia, this is Kevin. I did get one
yes.
more here. Like Ian wants to make a comment. Couldn't raise his hand.
Okay. Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It was such a great summation, council member, and I'm sorry to kind of come back afterwards and reopen the conversation. I can hold my question till the next conversation. I think what's really clear is that that's really what's next is going to be more conversation. So, I'll just carry my conversation to then. Thanks so much for hosting.
Okay.
And have one more for Angela Williams wants to make a comment.
Go ahead, Angela.
Yeah. Thank you. I find, you say this is an exceptional location because of kind of the interstate, and we find the same exception on the south side of Whites Creek with Briley Parkway, and those roads, those big highways cut Whites Creek into four pieces. They were not, it was kind of like the story of North Nashville when the interstates went through. It cut up the community, and it diverted, downtown Whites Creek kind of shriveled away, and it diverted, towards the interstate, things of that nature. And so, it's an exceptional location because it has been used as like much of North Nashville as not very valuable, not very represented, and you can look at Metro's spending out here over the years, and it hasn't matched by any means the rest of the community or the rest of the city. So I think this is the remnants of what's left of Whites Creek after some very difficult policies and development that decimated parts of our community. So I mean, from that perspective, I think that it's even more important to be super thoughtful about how we go about developing this unique area and make it the jewel of Nashville, and then how we treat the land, because they're not making much more of that. So that would be my suggestion is I think there's some historical reckoning that needs to be a part of the conversation. Thank you.
And I had to unmute myself. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for your comments tonight. We appreciate them. We will be in touch regarding next steps, and we'll be reaching out broadly to the Whites Creek community when we decide on a next step. In the meantime, feel free to send me an email with any comments or thoughts you have, particularly if you have thoughts on how to adjust the study area. I know many of you mentioned that tonight. Feel free to give me some advice there. Would very much love to see it. And I think we will end on that note. My email is on the notice. It's also in the chat box. But for those of you on the phone, it's Olivia, spelled the usual way, .RANSEEN @nashville.gov. So feel free to shoot me an email. Thanks everyone, and we'll be in touch. Have a good one.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Sorry to have you back next time, hopefully.
Oh, no, you did a great job. Would you mind when you get the chance to just, I know there should be like a meeting summary or something, not like just in the next couple of days, just in case there's any questions or anything I missed.
Okay. Yeah. Send you the chat and the Q&A stuff, and send you. How does she usually send you the recording?
Perfect. Thanks
Okay.
so much,
All right.
Kevin.
You're welcome. All right. Bye.
Have a good one. Bye.